next thing we have to do is a functionality test to make sure it's fit for purpose. So we're going to check forward and back. Also, our steering lock, it's not touching anywhere to make sure we've got clearance. To do a functionality test, let's do the steering first, making sure it's not too heavy or too light. Then we've also got our steering clearance from lock to lock. Once that's correct, we've got to check and make sure the drive system, as far as our chain, is not too loose or too tight. It's clearing our pedals, everything is fine. Now we can put it under load and take it for a drive. That's our functionality test done. It worked really well. So prior to teardown and in preparation for paint, we need to do some detail work. Previously we've used Tech screws up the top to get our bonnet fitting. However, we still need to fit nutserts. Drill a hole, nutsert on the bottom and nutsert on the top. That was back on drawing 21. We've also got some surfacing to do that we need to highlight in preparation for paint. Our edge alignment has to be done externally and internally on the front guard to running board. Also, the rear guard to the running board, that has to be aligned both externally and internally. Just step back and have a really good look at it. The reason you stand back and take everything into perspective is because you have to make sure the overall package is correct. Are the headlights lining up? The tip of the guards? The wheel arch clearance? Because the human eye is drawn to what's wrong, not what's right. So have a good look at it. Make sure that you get it right, because once it's painted, you can never fix it again. Just a quick tip before teardown, organisation now will benefit you later for the reassembly. All your fasteners, put them back where they belong. The small parts, we can use resealable bags and write the part number on it. The larger parts can go into a tub, so let's begin the process of teardown. We've got it up on blocks now, front and rear. We've also taken our 4 wheels off. That's giving us good access in here to sand these faces, also to metal finish our guards, so we can do that on both sides. This section is too thick to sand, so what we'll do is use our cut-off disc, cut through the bottom just below the lower section of the marking, then the last couple of millimeters will sand. The final step in the process of metal finishing is to prepare the metal as good as you possibly can so that you can get a good quality result out of it. For example, here you can see this area is very smooth. Over here, it hasn't been finished very well. For our pedal car, we'll be powder coating, but to make sure it's ready, we'll be doing some hand tool work around this edge. Previously, we've sanded this face, the outside face, but remember, not too fussy on the inside face, because it's the outside face that really does need the work. So just hand tools, toe dolly, planishing hammer, and we'll be working around this face. There is a bit of a trick. If you're not sure and you can't feel it, what you do is put a rag on your hand, no seams, no zips, no folds or creases, and run it over the edge. And then you can really feel any highs or lows. Circle or indicate those lows and just work progressively from the front to the back. Just a quick tip, whilst you're smoothing this edge out, make sure you don't accidentally hit the swage with your hammer, because we've gone to a lot of effort to create that piece. So what I've done is I've just smoothed it out with the hammer and dolly. Now I'm using a fine second cut file, engineer's file, and then running it over the edge. Right? I don't want to touch this section of the guard, I just want to do the outside face. You can see that my finger is guiding it up against the vertical face. Any dark areas are low spots. Where the file's hitting, it's smooth and flat. We've got some file scratches from our second cut engineer's file. They need to be sanded out. So first of all, I'll be sanding them with 60 grit sandpaper and then 120. So we've got a small orbital pneumatic sander here that we'll be using. That's our sanding done. We've also filed the edges for alignment. We've deburred it so there's no sharp edges for any kids, etc. So now we need to repeat the same process on the other side. That's our left-hand side finished. The next thing we have to do is remove the bonnet top, the two side panels, our temperature gauge, our grille, headlight support bar, and then we can finish sanding around the radiator shroud. As you can see, we've still got some burrs on this from when we manufactured it and fitted it. So when we have these parts as individual pieces, prior to going for paint, we'll just do some deburring and a little bit of sanding. That's our radiator shroud sanded. We need to take these holes up a size from 4 to 5 millimeters, from 5 to 6 millimeters, because when we get powder coating or paint, it'll close up the whole size by about 0.5 millimeter in diameter. We can now also remove our radiator shroud and fit our 4 nut certs. Don't forget, when you're disassembling, put all your nuts and bolts back in to their parts box so when you do your reassembly, everything's organised. That's our radiator shroud off the car. We've previously marked our hole centres. Now we'll be doing a pilot hole, 3.5 mil, then a 9 mil drill bit to accept our 5 millimeter nut certs. That's our nut certs done in the radiator shroud. The next piece is our front valance. What we'll have to do is trim the sides. We'll be taking our hole size from 4 millimeters to 5, again for paint clearance. Then we can finish by sanding. Now we're up to removing the guards, front, rear, and also the running boards on both sides. Then we can start to sand the areas that we couldn't access previously. We'll also be drilling out our hole sizes from 4 to 5 millimeters and deburring any edges. That's all the guards and the running board removed from the car. We can now finish the process of sanding that we couldn't access before. Deburring any edges, also drilling hole sizes out from 4 to 5 millimeters to give us paint clearance. We can then start the process of abrasive blasting to get it ready for powder coating. I've got both the rear guards here, so just before we pull them apart, we'll give you a little tip. We'll put a little notch inside the front face of each of the mounting brackets. So that way, when it comes back from paint, you can orientate it the correct way. I've removed one of the tech screws only, so that way we can use this as a location point where we'll drill our 5 mil drill bit straight through. We can also do each of the end mounting points with our 5 mil drill bit. That's the front guard done. I've drilled the holes out, I've deburred, sanded to 120 grit finish. Now we can repeat the process to the other panels and continue with the teardown. We'll continue the disassembly process. We'll be separating the timber from the steel chassis. Our firewall, doors, floor, tray, cross members and chassis rail all need to be pulled apart. We're going to salvage our fasteners by putting them in the parts box. All the other parts and components can go into our storage bins so we don't lose anything. When removing the cross members, we'll be letter stamping the front face of each of the cross members. 1, 2, 3, 4. That way we orientate them when they're painted back in the correct position, and the holes will line up with the tray and also the rails. That's our timber teardown complete. We're now up to removing the steering wheel, the steering column and the steering arms. I'm separating the components of the steering wheel so that we can paint the centre. When the centre is painted, we'll then reattach our timber, glue and screw it. Then we can do our final sanding, finishing, because the strength of the steering wheel centre allows everything to hold together without breaking. You can see here we've marked the timber and also stamped the steel rim. When this is all being put back together, all this needs to be reorientated so we put it back in the same position. We're up to removing the drive system now, but before we do, check and make sure all the grub screws are tight. For example, the crank has to be tightened, the pillow bearing has to be tightened, also the drive sprocket has to be tightened. There's 5 points on the front. From the back, the drive hub, the pillow bearing, the following sprocket, all have to be tightened, so there's another 5 on the back. When we drop the axles down, we'll remove the chain. From that point, we can then mask all these components up and we'll paint the front axle as a unit. We'll also be painting the rear axle as a unit. The reason we don't powder coat these is because these are all an interference or slip-on fit. We've also got some plastic in our pillow bearings. They will melt at 200 degrees Celsius when the chassis gets powder coated. We're up to the last piece of teardown on the chassis. If you're spray painting, this is ready to go. We're going to be powder coating. So, our bushes here will be melting during that process. Therefore, we're going to drill them out. When we get it back from powder coating, we'll have to make a new pair of part number 37 bushes so that we can then press them into place. Now we're up to the refinishing stage. We've got 3 options. Your first option is rattle can. The rattle can is the cheapest, but it may not be the best for longevity or gloss. The next option is an industrial finish, which is powder coating. Again, it may not be the best for gloss. It's a little bit more expensive. Third and final option you have is to get it spray painted. High filled, blocked, beautiful, high gloss, really high quality finish. So those are the 3 options that you have based on attention to detail and cost. We've completed the teardown of the pedal car now. We've separated them into the different refinishing groups. With our timber parts, we'll be using a little bit of filler, sand it, undercoat, then oil-based paint. We'll be using a classic cream colour, black for our chassis parts. Then when it's all put back together, we'll be getting it professionally sign written as per the original Chevrolet truck. These are our sheet metal parts. We'll be powder coating all these parts. The advantage to powder coating is it's a durable finish. It's quite affordable. You can also get it in matte, satin or gloss in a wide range of colours. However, you have to do some preparation work before powder coating. Cleaning or blasting any weld areas. Any corrosion has to be cleaned. Also, threads. Threads has to be masked up. Now your powder coater will have that masking tape, it's a high temperature tape. However, female threads will be putting some bolts in it and they can also use that to hang the parts up. These parts will be masking and spray painting. We're not going to powder coat them because we've got some very tight tolerances here. We've got bearing caps. We've also got a nylon insert that we use on our steering column. That's not going to be up to the temperature process in the powder coating. These parts over here don't need any surface finishing. The timber rim, when we put this back together on the center, will be sanded and varnished.